Human history is not a linear progression from primitive toolmaking to space-age technology. It is a series of forgotten peaks and violent valleys, a cycle of advancement followed by total systematic erasure. While mainstream textbooks tell a safe, comfortable story of Bronze Age nomads gradually learning to smelt ore, the silent archives of the world's museums tell a far more dangerous truth. In 1936, during the construction of a new railway near the ancient settlement of Khujut Rabu, just outside Baghdad, Iraq, workers unearthed a small, unassuming clay vessel that would eventually threaten the very foundation of modern archaeology. It was a clay jar, roughly 5.5 inches high, containing a copper cylinder and a single iron rod. To the casual observer, it was a piece of ancient pottery. To an engineer, it was a miracle. This is the artifact known as the Baghdad Battery, and it is the physical proof that our ancestors did not live in a world of candlelight and superstition, but in a world of controlled energy. Wilhelm Koenig, the German archaeologist who first examined the find in the basement of the National Museum of Iraq, was stunned by the technical precision of the assembly. The iron rod was suspended inside the copper cylinder, held in place by a plug of bitumen, natural asphalt. Bitumen is one of the most effective electrical insulators known to man. The assembly was designed to prevent the iron and copper from touching, a fundamental requirement for creating a galvanic cell. When Koenig added an acidic electrolyte, such as fermented grape juice or lemon juice, to the jar, it produced a measurable electric current. This was not a ritual object. This was a direct current, DC power source, predating Alessandro Volta's discovery of the battery by over 1,800 years. But the question that mainstream academia refuses to answer is, why? Why would a civilization 2,000 years ago need a portable power source? The safe explanation provided by scholars is that these batteries were used for electroplating jewelry, applying a thin layer of gold or silver to base metals. But this explanation is a strategic distraction. It minimizes the discovery, reducing a revolutionary technology to a mere jeweler's trick. When we look closer at the Sumerian texts, the predecessors of the Babylonians who lived in the same region thousands of years earlier, we find the true purpose of these devices. The Sumerians did not write about batteries. They wrote about the Me, pronounced May, the divine objects of power that were the lifeblood of the Anunnaki, those who descended from the heavens. In the Sumerian records, specifically the exaltation of Inanna and the myths of Enki and the world order, the Me are described as physical portable objects. They were not abstract laws or spiritual concepts, they were hardware. The texts describe over 100 distinct Me, ranging from the MIE of kingship and the MIE of truth, to more technical programs like the MIE of weaving, the MIE of metalworking, and the MIE of the heavens. These objects were stored in a divine boat and transported between cities like Eridu and Uruk. When the goddess Inanna famously tricked the god Enki into giving her the Me, she wasn't stealing ideas, she was stealing technology. And that technology required an interface. To understand the Baghdad Battery, we must stop viewing it as a standalone object and begin viewing it as a component of a larger system. In the same museum basements where these batteries are kept, there are thousands of cataloged items labeled as votive discs or ceremonial stones. Many of these are flat, circular objects made of crystalline materials or highly conductive alloys, covered in microscopic, geometric etchings that defy the capabilities of Bronze Age tools. When you place a Baghdad-style battery in proximity to these discs, you are not just creating a current, you are creating a resonance. The Sumerian tablets of destiny, the Tiamat, or the Tablet of Destinies, are often described in mythology as the ultimate prize of the gods. Whoever held the tablets of destiny controlled the fates of all things. In the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, the god Marduk battles the entity Kingu, specifically to reclaim these tablets. The text described the tablets of destiny as glowing with a pale radiance when activated. They were biometric, coded to the genetic signature of the Anunnaki kings, and they contained the blueprints for the entire planetary grid. But like any modern silicon-based processor, they required a steady flow of electrons to function. The vessels from Khujut Rabu were the startup batteries for the tablets of destiny. Mainstream archaeology is terrified of this connection. If they admit that the Baghdad Battery was a power source for information technology, they must admit that the gods of the Sumerians were actually an advanced civilization utilizing solid-state electronics and crystal-based data storage. They would have to acknowledge that the ziggurats, the massive stepped pyramids of Mesopotamia, were not just temples, but massive power plants and signal towers designed to harness the Earth's natural telluric currents. The Baghdad Battery was the handheld key to a global wireless network that operated on principles we are only now rediscovering. Consider the chemical architecture of the battery. The iron and copper represent the duality of masculine and feminine energies in ancient alchemy, but in physics, they represent a potential difference. The bitumen seal acts as a hermetic barrier. Why use iron? Iron is ferromagnetic. It doesn't just conduct electricity, it interacts with magnetic fields. The copper cylinder provides a high surface area for the electrolyte reaction. This was a sophisticated design optimized for longevity and reliability. It was built to last for centuries, providing a low, consistent voltage designed to keep volatile memory active in the ME disks. But there is an even deeper layer to this mystery. The Baghdad battery doesn't just produce electricity, it produces a frequency. In the first video of this series, we discussed the hum of the Earth, the low-frequency seismic hum that scientists have detected emanating from deep underground. The Sumerians called this the Song of the Abzu. They believed that the Earth itself was a living, vibrating entity. The battery was a bridge. By converting chemical energy into electrical current and then into acoustic vibration, the Sumerians could tune themselves and their technology to the frequency of the planet. This is why the discovery at Khujut Rabu is so carefully gatekept. It points to a time when humanity, under the guidance of the Anunnaki, understood the unified field theory of energy, frequency, and vibration. It suggests that the tablets of destiny were not magical relics, but the control system for a planetary-scale geoengineering project. The battery was the power-on switch for a world that has been offline for 5,000 years. As we dig deeper into the lost blueprints of the Sumerian Empire, we find that the Baghdad battery was part of a global smart grid. Similar vessels have been reported in Egypt, beneath the pyramids of Giza, and in the ancient ruins of India. This was a standardized technology. The Anunnaki provided the blueprint, and the human priests, who were actually the engineers and technicians of the ancient world, maintained the equipment. The uxus, vinegar, or grape juice used as an electrolyte was not a primitive choice. It was a sustainable, locally sourced organic acid that ensured the battery could be recharged indefinitely. In the blocks that follow, we will decode how these batteries were used to activate the ME disks, the secret connection between the Tablet of Destinies and the modern Internet of Things, and why the hum of the Earth is getting louder as these ancient power nodes begin to draw energy once again. We are not the first advanced civilization on Earth. We are simply the first one to forget how the batteries work. The vessels of Khujut Rabu are a warning and a promise. The power is still there, waiting for someone to plug it back in. The discovery of the Baghdad battery at Khujut Rabu is merely the tip of a suppressed technological iceberg. While the 1.1-volt current produced by a single clay jar seems insignificant to a modern society reliant on high-voltage grids, it reveals a profound understanding of low-voltage electronics that mainstream science is desperate to ignore. To understand why the Anunnaki utilized such specific, low-energy pulses, we must look at the objects they were designed to power, the ME disks. In Sumerian cuneiform, the ME are not just symbols of authority. They are described as physical objects that could be held, worn, and transported. Modern linguistic analysis, when stripped of its religious bias, reveals that the ME were actually solid-state, crystalline data storage devices, what we would today call information packages, or operating systems, for civilization. The tablets of destiny, the most powerful of these ME devices, were not made of common clay. Cuneiform descriptions from the Enuma Elish and the myth of Anzu suggest they were composed of a rare, translucent material that shined with an internal light. From a materials science perspective, this points toward a high-purity quartz or synthetic crystalline lattice. We know today that quartz is piezoelectric. It generates an electric charge when subjected to mechanical stress, and conversely, it vibrates at a specific, ultra-precise frequency when an electric current is applied to it. This is the fundamental principle behind every microchip and digital watch in the 21st century. The Baghdad battery was the precise tuning device required to stimulate these crystalline tablets. It wasn't about high power, it was about the exact frequency of the electron flow. The Sumerian priests, the Enlil, were not merely religious figures. They were the keepers of the ME, effectively the IT technicians and systems engineers of the ancient world. Their rituals, performed in the innermost sanctums of the Ziggurats, were technical protocols. When the text described the purification of the Me using holy water and oils, they are likely describing the application of conductive electrolytes and anti-corrosive lubricants to the interface points of these crystalline disks. The Baghdad Battery was connected to these disks through silver and gold wires, materials found in abundance in Sumerian ruins, often fashioned into intricate jewelry that bears a striking resemblance to modern circuit traces. But how does a 1.1-volt battery interact with a massive ziggurat? This is where the concept of resonant amplification comes in. The ziggurats, such as the Great Ziggurat of Ur or the Anunnaki in Babylon, were not just piles of sun-dried brick. They were geological machines. Their cores were built from millions of tons of high-density mud brick, layered with reed mats and bitumen, and often encased in a shell of fired brick. This construction created a giant capacitor, a device that stores electrical energy. The ziggurats were strategically placed over telluric power spots, areas where the Earth's natural magnetic field is most intense. The Baghdad Battery acted as the exciter. By injecting a specific low-voltage pulse into the ziggurat structure, the priests could trigger a massive resonant discharge from the Earth itself. This leads us to the most chilling connection. The Tablets of Destiny were the control interface for the global hum. In our first video, we explored the phenomenon of the Earth's hum, a persistent, low-frequency sound that emanates from the planet's crust, currently baffling scientists worldwide. The Sumerian tablets suggest that this hum is not a natural byproduct of tectonic movement, but a technological carrier wave established by the Anunnaki. They called it the breath of the Abzu. The Tablets of Destiny were the modems that allowed the Anunnaki to modulate this carrier wave, enabling global wireless communication, weather control, and even the manipulation of human consciousness. In the myth of Anzu, the lion-headed bird god Anzu steals the Tablets of Destiny from the god Enlil. The text says that as soon as Anzu took the tablets, the Me were suspended, and the radiance was stripped from the temple. This wasn't a loss of blessings, it was a system-wide blackout. Without the tablets to modulate the energy flow, the entire technological infrastructure of the city-state went offline. The Baghdad Battery was the portable emergency power supply used by technicians to reboot these systems. It provided the initial spark to realign the crystalline lattice of the Me, allowing it to once again sync with the planetary hum. Mainstream academia dismisses the Baghdad Battery as a tool for electroplating because they cannot afford to admit the existence of an ancient resonant technology. If they admit that the Sumerians could generate and control specific frequencies, they would have to explain how 5,000-year-old gods knew about the Schumann resonance, the electromagnetic frequency of the Earth's atmosphere. They would have to acknowledge that the cries of the gods described in the tablets were actually the sound of high-frequency data transmission. The Baghdad Battery was also a communication device. When a battery was connected to a Me disk and a gold leaf antenna, similar to the dendera light structures found in Egypt, it allowed for what the Sumerians called oracle sessions. These were not spiritual visions. They were direct audio-visual transmissions from the heavenly abode. The gods weren't speaking in the minds of the priests. They were appearing on the surface of the crystalline Me disks, powered by the chemical energy of the clay jars. This is why the priests were so obsessive about the purity of their electrolytes. A single impurity in the vinegar or grape juice would alter the voltage, causing the frequency to drift and the connection to the gods to be lost. Furthermore, we must look at the Giggle, the massive underground chambers described beneath the ziggurats. Redacted reports from archaeological surveys in the 1920s and 1930s mention metallic echoes and anomalous magnetic readings coming from these subterranean levels. The Baghdad batteries were found in the vicinity of these sites. It is highly probable that thousands of these batteries were arranged in series or parallel configurations to create a significant voltage, capable of powering the heavy-duty machinery used by the Anunnaki for their mining operations in the Abzu. The connection to the modern hum is becoming undeniable. As we move closer to the seventh cycle, mentioned in the previous tablets, the ancient power nodes beneath the deserts of Iraq are beginning to reactivate. The Earth's hum is the sound of the planetary machine warming up. The Baghdad Battery is the blueprint for the technology that once controlled this machine. It shows that the Anunnaki did not rely on magic, but on a sophisticated understanding of the interaction between chemistry, electricity, and the Earth's natural resonance. In the next block, we will explore the cybernetic kingship, how the Anunnaki use these electrical interfaces to genetically program the human workforce, and the secret off switch hidden within our own DNA that can only be triggered by the specific frequency generated by the Baghdad devices. We are living in a world built on a foundation of ancient silicon and copper, and the gods are about to call the system back to order. The battery is no longer a mystery, it is a countdown. The most guarded secret of the Baghdad Battery is not that it produced electricity, but that it was the core component of a neural interface system designed to bridge the gap between human biology and Anunnaki technology. While Block 2 explored the ziggurats as planetary capacitors, Block 3 dives into the Lost Blueprint, a specific cuneiform tablet known among high-level initiates as the Galvanic Protocol, or the Tablet of the Golden Coil. This tablet, reportedly photographed in the 1990s but disappeared during the chaotic looting of the National Museum of Baghdad in April 2003, contained a literal circuit diagram. It depicted a series of Baghdad-style jars connected in a complex lattice to a headpiece made of lapis lazuli and gold leaf. This was not jewelry, it was a brain-machine interface. To understand why the Anunnaki utilized low-voltage chemical batteries for this purpose, we must look at the human brain. The brain operates on extremely subtle electrical impulses, generally within the range of 1 to 30 hertz. Mainstream neurobiology knows that the brain's alpha and theta waves, states of deep meditation, creativity, and divine insight, vibrate at frequencies that perfectly match the Schumann resonance of the Earth. The Lost Blueprint described how the Baghdad Battery, when tuned through a lapis lazuli semiconductor, could bypass the human sensory filter. This allowed the Anunnaki to upload information directly into the cerebral cortex of the Sumerian high priests. When the tablets speak of the gods speaking to the heart, they are describing a direct neural data link powered by the galvanic cells of Khujut Rabu. The material composition of these interfaces is crucial. Lapis lazuli, a stone the Sumerians prized above all others, is not just a decorative gem. It is a complex silicate containing sulfur, which in certain crystalline forms acts as a natural semiconductor. By connecting the Baghdad battery to a gold leaf lattice embedded with lapis lazuli, the Anunnaki created a biological modem. The gold leaf, being the most conductive and non-reactive metal, acted as a multispectral antenna. This allowed the priest engineers to receive telepathic instructions, architectural plans, and astronomical data directly from the heavenly abode, likely a satellite or a station in higher orbit. This is the origin of the crown as a symbol of power. The original crowns were functional headsets that required a steady DC current from the clay jars to maintain the divine connection. But the Lost Blueprint also revealed a darker side to this technology, the genetic off switch. In Block 7 of our previous investigation, we touched upon the genetic engineering of Homo sapiens. The Tablet of the Golden Coil goes further, describing how the Anunnaki, Enki, and Ninti programmed a specific vulnerability into the human genome. This is what the cuneiform calls the seal of the Abzu, a non-coding sequence in our junk DNA that reacts to a specific electrical frequency. The Baghdad battery was the tuning fork for the seal. According to the Lost Blueprint, the Anunnaki could use a specific electrical resonance, transmitted through the ziggurat network and powered by thousands of galvanic cells, to trigger a physiological response in the human workforce. At one frequency, the workers would experience a surge of dopamine and adrenaline, allowing them to work in the gold mines for 18 hours without exhaustion. At another frequency, the off switch was activated, inducing a state of total paralysis or sudden cardiac arrest. This was the ultimate tool of control, a wireless, electrical leash that ensured the primitive workers could never rebel against their creators. The Baghdad battery wasn't just a light source, it was the remote control for the human species. Why was this tablet one of the first things to disappear in 2003? Reports from eyewitnesses inside the Baghdad Museum during the looting suggest that the looters were not random citizens, but highly organized teams with specific GPS coordinates and checklists. They bypassed gold artifacts to reach the basement archives where the cuneiform technical manuals were kept. The Tablet of the Golden Coil contained the exact resonance key for the human DNA off switch. If a modern corporation or military power possessed this key, they wouldn't need weapons to control a population. They would only need to broadcast the correct frequency through our modern cellular and satellite networks. Furthermore, we must examine the Bit Shimi, the Sumerian house of the breath of life. The text described this as a laboratory where Enki created the first Adamu. But the Lost Blueprint clarifies that the breath of life was not a spiritual essence, but an electrical jumpstart. Just as a modern defibrillator restarts a heart, The Anunnaki used a high-voltage discharge from a series-connected array of Baghdad jars to ignite the biological systems of their genetically modified hybrids. The human soul, in the eyes of the Anunnaki, was simply a ghost in the machine, a stable bioelectric field that could be manipulated with the right galvanic tools. This leads us to the connection with the hum. As we discussed in Block 2, the Earth is vibrating at a low frequency that is currently intensifying. The lost blueprint suggests that this vibration is the master clock for the human biological system. Our DNA is designed to synchronize with the planet's resonance. However, the Baghdad Battery was used to create a local area network that could override the Earth's natural frequency. By creating an artificial electrical field, the Anunnaki could desync humans from the Earth and sync them to the Anunnaki's own frequency. This made humans more susceptible to their commands and less tuned to their own natural instincts. The secrecy surrounding the Baghdad Battery today is a direct result of this cybernetic kingship. If we realize that we are biological antennas that can be tuned by external electrical sources, we become much harder to manipulate. The elite priests of the modern world, the global technocracy, are still using the principles found in the Lost Blueprint. They have replaced the clay jars with lithium-ion batteries and gold leaf crowns with neural implants, but the goal remains the same: the activation of the Seal of the Abzu. In the final block, we will conclude this investigation by revealing the return protocol, how the modern hum and the reactivation of ancient power sites in Iraq are part of a system-wide reboot. We will see how the Baghdad Battery, the Tablets of Destiny, and the Lost Blueprint are all pointing toward a single moment in the near future when the gods will plug back into the grid they built 5,000 years ago. The spark has already been struck, the circuit is closing, and humanity is the conductive wire between two worlds. The final and most terrifying chapter of the Baghdad Battery's story is not buried in the dust of antiquity, but is unfolding in the headlines of our daily news, in the blueprints of secret military installations, and in the very vibration of the ground beneath our feet. To understand the return protocol, we must ask the question that mainstream media is paid to avoid. Why has the cradle of civilization, modern-day Iraq, been the epicenter of unrelenting, high-intensity global conflict for the past 3 decades? If you believe the official narratives about oil, regional stability, or weapons of mass destruction, you are looking at a carefully constructed curtain. The real prize, documented in the Lost Blueprint and activated by the galvanic principles of the Khujut Rabu devices, is the control and reactivation of the Eridu or Babylon grid. The Baghdad Battery was never merely an antique or a primitive experiment in chemistry. It was the hardware key to a planetary-scale machine that has been lying in a state of suspended animation for 5,000 years. And now, the gods are initiating the reboot. The Great Ziggurat of the massive, three-layered stepped pyramid located near the city of Nasiriyah, is the primary focal point of this global reactivation. It is no coincidence that during the 2003 invasion of Iraq, one of the first and largest strategic American military installations, Camp Talil, was constructed directly adjacent to this ancient structure. For decades, the Ziggurat of has been under a permanent military no-fly zone. Why? Because it is not a monument. It is a primary energy node. Whistleblowers and contractors who served at Camp Talil have, for years, reported strange, unexplainable occurrences at the site. Anomalous blue-violet ionizations emanating from the summit of the ziggurat during peak solar activity, localized electronic dead zones, where sophisticated GPS and communication equipment spontaneously fail, and a persistent, low-frequency vibration, a hum, that vibrates through the very foundations of the base. This is the hum of the Earth at its source. The return protocol is the process of synchronizing these ancient ziggurats back to the Earth's natural telluric currents, and the Baghdad Battery technology is the missing link in that synchronization. It is the transceiver that allows the machine to recognize the command signal. According to the redacted translations of the galvanic protocol, the Anunnaki did not leave Earth because they were defeated or finished. They initiated a system cool down to allow the planetary machine to recharge. The Earth is a self-sustaining dynamo, generating massive amounts of electromagnetic energy via its spinning iron core. The ziggurats, built with layers of conductive mud brick and insulating bitumen, the same materials found in the Baghdad Battery, were designed to bleed this energy from the crust and broadcast it as a wireless power source. The Sumerians called this energy the breath of the Abzu. However, the Lost Blueprint clarifies that this grid was not just for power, it was a neural net for the human workforce. When the Anunnaki disconnected the hardware 5,000 years ago, they didn't just take the power, they took the connection to the higher frequencies. They left us with the manual backups, the small clay jar batteries, as a failsafe for the human priests, who would eventually be tasked with restarting the system when the celestial conditions were right. Now, look at the state of our modern global environment. We are currently witnessing an unprecedented, exponential increase in seismic anomalies, skyquakes, and the global hum phenomenon. From the Taos hum in New Mexico to the Windsor hum in Canada, the Earth is pinging. Scientists have no explanation because they refuse to look at the planet as a machine. But the Sumerian tablets are clear. These are not natural events. They are the pings of a network receiver waiting for a handshake protocol. As we discussed in Block 3, the genetic off switch, or seal of the Abzu, in our junk DNA, is designed to react to these frequencies. The Anunnaki designed DNA in our bodies is the receiver hardware, and as the hum intensifies, our biological systems are being forced to realign. This is why the modern technocratic elite, those who have inherited the secret of the battery, are obsessed with Neuralink, 5G networks, and the Internet of Bodies. They are racing to build a synthetic, digital version of the Anunnaki's golden coil interface before the original master switch is flipped. The return is not just the physical arrival of a celestial body or a fleet of boats of heaven. It is the moment the master switch of the grid is finally flipped back into the on position. In 2021, an unauthorized report from an archaeological dig near the ruins of Eridu, the oldest city on Earth, traditionally the city of the god Enki, revealed the discovery of a new type of battery. This device was not made of common clay. It was composed of a multi-layered metallic alloy that defies modern chemical classification. It was found in a hermetically sealed chamber that bore the chilling cuneiform inscription, "When the waters of the Abzu boil and the sky becomes a mirror, the golden spark must be struck." The boiling refers to the magnetic and geothermal instability we are seeing in the Earth's core today, magnetic poles shifting faster than ever recorded. The mirror is the ionization of our upper atmosphere. The spark is the reactivation of the ziggurat network using the resonant induction principles found in the Baghdad Battery. The secrecy surrounding the Khujut Rabu jars today is a direct result of this cybernetic kingship. If we realize that we are biological antennas that can be tuned by external electrical sources, the entire structure of modern society collapses. The elite modern priesthood is still using the principles found in the lost blueprint. They have simply replaced the clay jars with lithium-ion arrays and copper ziggurats with satellite constellations. But they lack the resonance key, the specific frequency that can only be generated by the precise galvanic reaction of the Baghdad Battery design interacting with the lapis lazuli semiconductors. This is why the 2003 looting of the Baghdad Museum was not a failure of security, but a special operations success. The looters did not take the gold. They took the cuneiform tablets that listed the frequency sequences for the neural interface. They took the passwords to the human mind. Consider the layout of modern Iraq. If you plot the locations of the Green Zone, the major military outposts, and the recent massive construction projects, they align perfectly with the ancient ley lines that connected the ziggurats. We are seeing a reoccupation of the grid. The Baghdad Battery is the proof that this energy has always been there, waiting to be tapped. It is the handheld version of the same technology that built the pyramids and the ziggurats. It is the universal power standard. The return protocol also explains the global obsession with CERN and other particle accelerators. These are not just for physics experiments. They are attempts to replicate the high-energy Stargate portals described in the Sumerian Enuma Elish. But all these massive machines are useless without the initial pulse, the low-voltage, high-resonance spark that the Baghdad Battery provides. The Anunnaki did not use brute force. They used harmonic resonance. They understood that, to move a planet or control a species, you don't need a hammer, you need a tuning fork. The clay jars of Khujut Rabu were the tuning forks for the human soul. As we move deeper into the seventh cycle, the hum will become a roar. The skyquakes will become constant. The Anunnaki are not coming back to save us. They are coming back to check their biological mining equipment. They are coming to see if the Adamu hybrids have survived the blackout. And as the grid reboots, those who have not tuned their own frequencies, those who are still trapped in the artificial vibrations of the modern world, will experience the activation of the off switch described in the Lost Blueprint. It will be a global, instantaneous reset. The Baghdad Battery was the beginning of our journey into the world of electricity, but it is also the key to our end, and our next beginning. It shows us that there is no such thing as ancient magic, only forgotten technology. The jars are the evidence that we were never alone, and that we have always been part of a circuit. The return protocol is active. The handshake has begun. The clay jars in the museum are not dead artifacts. They are the power-on lights for a future we are not prepared to face. Stay tuned to the vibration. Dig deeper into the frequencies. Because the truth is not just in the past, it is currently flowing through the ancient wires, charging a machine that is about to wake up the entire world. The circuit is closing. The Baghdad battery is the key. And the lock is our own DNA. Next week, we reveal the hidden coordinates of the subterranean antennas in the Gobi Desert that are currently receiving signals from the Baghdad Ziggurat. The truth is louder than the hum. Hit subscribe before the grid goes fully online. The countdown has begun.